Hi, I'm Sari Sudhakaran. A lot of people mistakenly think if everything in a frame is in focus, it's always deep focus. That's not always the case. Deep focus cinematography demands the consistent use of a large depth of field, no matter what the focal length or action. In this shot from Run, directed by Akira Kurosawa, everything is in focus, as practically as can be. This deep focus shot is relatively easy because filming with a wide-angle lens automatically gives you greater depth of field. That's more things in the foreground and background falling in focus. Filming with a telephoto lens makes it a lot harder because your depth of field is low. A cinematographer has to do something special to get everything in focus. Both shots define deep focus cinematography when used in combination. But if you only see wide-angle establishing shots, we don't always call it deep focus cinematography. To achieve deep focus, you have to stop down the aperture to increase your depth of field, so that everything, regardless of where they are physically, is equally sharp, or equally in focus. This is a lot harder than it looks. In many respects, deep focus is similar to sketching. When we sketch, everything's sharp. You need some skill in blurring out details in a sketch. Our eyes also work the same way. Everything's always equally sharp, even when our attention is not on it. However, our eyes are selective in isolating what it is looking at among a sea of equally sharp things. We just change attention from one thing to the next, similar to how you can scan a painting hung on a wall. It's all great when you're talking about a photograph or a painting that the audience has time to study. In film, every second has 24 frames, and there's no time to study anything deeply. Moreover, shots from various angles are presented in succession. Most people in the audience focus their attention on the actors and performances. Only a negligible few will look at what's happening in the background, even if it were sharp. That's why it's perfectly acceptable for the background to be blurred, even completely unrecognizable. It's just not important enough. This is called shallow depth of field, and is the accepted norm followed by most filmmakers. Many would even go as far as to say this is cinematic. This is a big reason why filmmakers don't opt for deep focus, but that's not all. There are other roadblocks as well. The aperture selected by the cinematographer will dictate the depth of field. If you want more depth of field, you have to stop down the aperture. This means you have to add more light. Adding light means more light fixtures, greater power demands and more manpower, and more time to set up everything. Getting deep focus consistently throughout a feature film significantly increases the cost of production. You can imagine why deep focus is not popular among producers. Before you get the wrong idea, both deep focus and shallow focus can be tastefully done, and both can be done poorly. Some of you might be thinking, why add more light? Why not just compensate with the shutter speed, as is done in photography? In cinematography, the shutter speed is fixed most of the time. Check out my videos on exposure and shutter speeds to understand why. The only two things you can practically do is to raise the ISO or add more light. Adding light costs time and money, and raising the ISO increases noise and reduces the dynamic range of most cameras. The last big roadblock is something called diffraction. When you stop down a lens to f8 and beyond, the image loses sharpness. You'll find explanations for all of these terms on my site, but if you're serious about your cinematography. A few years ago, I experimented with deep focus on my short film Man Made Love. It's on YouTube. I wanted to see if I could achieve deep focus with minimal light. We were on a tight schedule and budget. I used a red Monstro because it was a better camera for low light. I used Arri master anamorphic lenses and had to stop down to a T8 most of the time to get deep focus. This is why I was forced to raise the ISO to 6400 to get a barely usable exposure. Any higher and the image looked bad. Without adding light, it would have been hopeless. And to make it harder, I used telephoto lenses, because that's what I like. Using wider lenses would have made life a lot easier. It would have also been easier to open up the aperture and blur out the background. Many people would have considered that more cinematic, but not me. You can study the results for yourself and see how hard it is to achieve deep focus. From a practical perspective, shallow depth of field can hide poor or low-budget set design or locations. It can isolate the subject better, and you also need less light. This is why shallow depth of field is easy, and deep focus is rare. Yet, a few directors over the ages have mastered the art of deep focus. Orson Welles is a great example. I've made a few videos on his work, and I urge you to watch them, as well as the video on cinematographer Greg Toland, who was a pioneer of deep focus cinematography. In this video, I'll focus on my favorite director, Akira Kurosawa, and how he used deep focus. I picked Kurosawa because, unlike Orson Welles, Kurosawa was not always wedded to deep focus. He was comfortable with both deep focus and shallow focus. Also, he tended to pick longer focal lengths, making it that much harder. Did he have a good reason to make it hard on himself and his actors and producers? Let's find out. Let's start with Rashomon, one of his early films, low budget with lots of restrictions on equipment and light. There are many scenes where he would have loved to achieve deep focus throughout, like for example this one where the three individuals are sitting at the Rashomon gate during the downpour. When he used a wide-angle lens, he achieved deep focus. When he used longer focal lengths for the mid-shots and close-ups, he could no longer get enough light, and probably gave up on the idea. Yet he fought for deep focus whenever he could. It was not an accident. One often cited reason for deep focus is so you can see two or more things at the same time. For example, here the three actors are talking, and the rain in the background is equally sharp. The question is, will anyone in the audience be looking at the rain? Would it have been so bad for the rain to be slightly out of focus? You can hear the rain over the audio track. You see the rain in the preceding and succeeding shots, so it's not like you will forget it's raining. Instead of rain, what if it was something more important, like the expression of another person? Later in the film, you have a deep focus shot of three characters, two of whom are about to fight, and the woman is in the middle. The big question is, why do we need to see all their expressions at the same time? Couldn't the director have cut from one expression to the next? In fact, Kurosawa does exactly that at different points in the film. What was so special about this one shot? The only plausible explanation is that's how Akira Kurosawa saw the world. It is a kind of film language, a style, if you will, a way of expressing how you see things at that moment. You're not supposed to look for logical explanations, but subjective ones. The subjective explanation in this case is that Kurosawa was a painter, and his visuals are influenced by traditional Japanese paintings. It is only natural that he tried to replicate this in his films. In High and Low, you have this shot of everyone turning their back to see smoke from a factory. It would have taken time to stage the actors and light it to achieve deep focus. Yet that's how he saw the world, like a painting. That's probably why almost every frame for most of his films is like a painting, where everything is sharp and recognizable most of the time. Deep focus takes a great understanding of film composition. Your film sets, costumes, blocking had all better be great. Any shortcomings will be painfully visible. Deep focus is a style just as a musician produces a complex melody or a chef creates a complicated dish. Deep focus cinematography is a different sensory experience. As Kurosawa progressed in his career, his use of deep focus became more pronounced. In Yojimbo, he uses deep focus with great skill. It allowed Kurosawa to create a world in a pictorial style only he could imagine, and he wanted to communicate that to us. That's as good a reason as any to enjoy deep focus cinematography. If you like this video, please share it with everyone you know. That's true deep focus.